All right. I want to say welcome to the St. Louis Tableau user group. The timing of that slide couldn't have been any better. Like how it popped up there, just like it was meant to be. Thanks for joining us for our second virtual user group. I hope that the folks that were able to make it back in May found that enjoyable and a lot of good value in the content that was provided. Today we have some additional great content to share with you guys. Just a few housekeeping items before we go. I want to highlight a few things that are going on in the Tableau community. For those of you who are certified, it is Certifiably Tableau month. So if you're certified in Tableau, get out there and share that on the social media with the hashtag Certifiably Tableau. If you're not certified, this is a great time to do it. Right now, you can get a 10% discount on a couple of the certification exams. And as part of that, Tableau is also giving back to some minority-driven organizations. So a lot of good stuff going on there. If you're not engaged with the St. Louis Tableau user group on LinkedIn, there's some information through these slides that I hope you've seen about joining that LinkedIn group. This information is all being recorded and will be shared after the meeting as well. Also within this Zoom session, there's the opportunity for a chat, but there's also the opportunity for Q&A. So if you have any questions while we're going through the presentations, please leverage the Q&A functionality. Some of the members of the panel that aren't speaking will be monitoring that throughout, and we should be able to respond. And I think, oh, one last thing. At the end of the content, we're going to try some breakout rooms. So as we get close to that point, we will be sharing a link so that you can join a second Zoom, because who doesn't need more Zoom in their life, where we can do some breakouts with each of the speakers today, where you'll get that one-on-one time to ask questions and connect with other members of the St. Louis Tableau user group. So without further ado, I think I'll kick it over to Ryan Rattenberg to introduce our first speaker.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. While Jessica is getting her screen share ready here, I just wanted to give you guys a quick introduction of Jessica Cochran. She's going to be our first speaker today. I met Jessica probably 4 years ago. I had a graphic design intern, and I was looking for somebody to be a mentor for her outside of the analytics group. And I through that, I met Jessica, who was at that time working in marketing and had been doing graphic design for quite some time in her career. And so from there, one thing led to another, and after a while, we had an opening within the analytics group for a Tableau designer, and reached out to Jessica, and Jessica was interested in the position. And so she's been a great addition to the analytics team as a graphic designer. And today she's here to kind of share some of her background, her story, and the value add that a graphic designer can bring into your analytics or in your Tableau work. So without further ado, Jessica, over to you.
Thank you, Ryan. Hey, everybody. I'm Jessica Cochran. I'm so glad to be here with you today. So my HR paperwork says that I'm a business intelligence analyst, but I call myself a data storyteller. I design and build data dashboards. So I hope what you get out of our time here today is the value that design and storytelling can add to your data to give it power and drive action. What you're also going to get is an explosion of imagery slides. So if you're working on a Word doc or an email, put that away, let me in, and let's get started. All right, if my keys work, there I am. I'm surviving, just like that moment right there. So I'm surviving every day like we all are in this pandemic, but I'm busy every day bringing my 20 years of design and marketing experience to an analytics group, trying to make us a more data-driven culture. So when we talk to our senior management about insights or try to manage firm-wide change with data, how do we use data to empower our decisions and not our emotions? So that's a great thought, but I'm going to take it a step back. When I meet people, I'm really curious about their backgrounds, their experiences and journeys. So I'm going to start today by telling you how I went from a graphic designer to the data world in the last year. Second, how can data sorry, I'm so immersed in data now, I can't speak between design and data, but how can design advance your data literacy with the design system toolkit? And how can you include design in your processes, maybe if you don't feel like a designer yourself? So let's start all about me. So when I was growing up, I actually really excelled at math and science, but I loved art. So as I thought about what I wanted to be when I grew up, I didn't want to be an art teacher or a starving artist. So I found a career called graphic design. And I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, which meant that all my electives outside my major were really long art lab hours. The flip side was I could give away all my homework as holiday gifts. I took a sculptures class. I learned how to weld. I scoured junkyards for metal supplies, but I really did feel like a boss with that torch. And I enjoyed the softer side of fibers, where I sat at a loom for hours weaving dyed fabric strands and drinking Diet Coke and popping M&Ms, and I loved it so much I took that class twice. And I got to go spend a summer in Paris where I studied all the art from my art history classes. And in my junior year, I got an internship at Edward Jones where I thought I'd be fetching coffee, delivering Xerox copies to all the wonderful people I would meet. You know, an internship. But no, I designed account statement inserts. They went to millions of our clients. I designed ads that went into the Wall Street Journal. I was getting real world experience and I got good pay. And I landed a full-time gig at Edward Jones 20 years ago. So as I got started in my career, I decided to get a master's in marketing so I could understand those 4 Ps: product, price, place, and promotion. I found I really liked Edward Jones. I wanted to ensure I had a long career and I wanted to deepen my knowledge. So I got a stockbroker's license, and that does mean I can sell a stock. I have not, and that test was really, really hard. But through all the testing and all the studying, I continued to grow my knowledge in design and my capabilities and my contributions. And thank goodness, as some of you might know, the design world evolved quickly from flat print to digital experiences that took design to a whole new dimension. I was going to become a dinosaur if I did not keep learning, so I immersed myself in brand direction and the digital world. My favorite part about my career in graphic design was art directing photo and video shoots. I visited some really cool locations across the country, met fascinating people, and sometimes I was lucky enough to fill in as a stunt double model or even play a B-roll photographer. But in the end, I knew my job wasn't just to create cool things, but to solve problems, tell stories, and bring people along in that experience. I found that I could get people to tell me their stories through whiteboard drawings, and I could interpret those through design and interactive experiences. I led passionately about what I thought made our role valuable to the firm as graphic designers. We were an asset, not a commodity. And I pushed really hard to get a seat at the strategic table so we weren't just sitting back being a pair of hands. So through all this passion, curiosity, and my design experience led me to today. I'm a business intelligence analyst at Edward Jones, and I design company performance dashboards. I bring design standards and principles into our work for better user experiences. And I'm helping our analytics organization get better at sharing the data insights that lead to firm recommendations. It's been a year since I joined this team in this role, and it's been rejuvenating. I'm trying to prove every day I was worth taking a chance on. I'm mentally exhausted. You're probably getting exhausted hearing me, but I feel like I'm learning a foreign language every day. I'm using both sides of my brain. It is rewarding. I used to always tell people I color, but now I color and write calculations. And I do believe this is a true sign of great leadership for those who hired me. They had a desire to build out a high-performing team and bring people together with diverse background experiences. So how did I get molded into this role? So I started off with some formal software training, think Tableau, SQL. I got training through on-the-job projects, and I've been learning so much from my team members. I'm so grateful for them. I had to get comfortable with vulnerability, which is really hard after 20 years of getting to a place where you feel like you know it all. But each day I I say it every day. You know, I don't understand what you're saying, but please keep trying and I'm gonna get better. For the first 6 months, I met associates and leaders in my analytics group, and I guess you could say I felt like a spinning rainbow disco ball on display. Analytics is a much different sandbox of people's skills and personalities than I was used to in my marketing career. I would say the people I met are introverted, very thoughtful, and you might not be surprised, but I'm 98% extroverted. That's on my resume. And I've also been helping analytics get better with the idea of visual storytelling with our data and insights through all of our communication channels. So don't just think about our dashboard reports or even a presentation, but we deliver one-pagers and we talk every day through email communication. So we all need to be better data storytellers. And this is where I found I could put my expertise to work immediately. This is not a new concept, the idea of design and story and data. I just listened to an amazing webinar yesterday on data visualization, very inspiring. But you know, I do realize that design can have the power to influence if it is clean and clear and actionable. So if you might recognize these cookies on your screen, Alice ate these cookies in Wonderland every time. You can call these cookies the OG influencer. So if we think about the influencer in our life today that kind of resembles these cookies, I'm gonna maybe make a far stretch here, but think about highway billboard signs. I have a little experiment. I'm gonna go to the next slide and I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. There it went. Did you get anything out of that? Did you read anything? Did you know that that was a sign for a restaurant? Who wants to go out to eat? But I don't know what exit to take. I don't know if they're open, and I'm not quite sure what kind of food they serve. But I'm really happy for you guys that maybe you didn't crash into your screen in that moment. But take a look at these billboards. They are great, strong, simple design, consistent, strong branding. They are truly simple and yet effective. And I don't know about you, but I'm remembering some things I need to add to my target list tonight. So here I am with my team. We've been on a journey together. I've been sharing that journey with you right now and telling you about my background and things I'm thinking about. I need to add toilet paper to my list. So our team's been on a journey over the last year of me talking about design and the benefit of design and data. So let's talk about data. We're all trying to create a data experience, one where our clients and our leaders and our users interact with data in a way that empowers them, informs them, helps them make decisions to become data-driven. But what do we find ourselves doing in these interactions and in these experiences? Are we actually overloading and smothering our users with too much data, poor chart types, bad design, and just too much of everything? So take a look at this experience and see what you think. I'm going to tell you what I think. The thing I noticed first, and I stop here, is London. They did a great job with this title, but everything else just is, you know, equal weight, intense color, similar shapes, and I just don't know where they want me to go first. In this example, the goal is to help us understand the relationships and trends between the data and the 2 different chart types. It's a lot of data in each chart type, and I'm maybe not as thoughtful as those people I told you about in analytics, so I'm just overwhelmed. But the new design of this chart type on the right easily helps me see what they want me to see. They called out these highlights with green asterisks. The designers use color, chart type, a simple statement at the top, and these highlight features to call out main insights. So in this report, they're sharing an equation as data, and as much of a geek as I am about the Big Bang Theory, I'm not learned enough about equations. You might read this and understand, but I don't. I'm not intrigued and I'm not inspired by this. But now we take this equation and convert it to a graphic where a broader audience can understand its intent. The cars are positioned in a way that I can see comparison and measurement between the data. I'm drawn in and I want to take a deep dive into this data. I'm interested. The design drew me in. So how do you get there? How do you bring design into your team? So our team is made up of people with different levels of technical skills and knowledge on data. Each one of us brings different background experiences. And because of all that, we're developing together at an exponential pace because of what we bring to the table. I obviously bring the design. So before you get hot and bothered and wonder, Jessica, where are you going with this? I'm not a designer and I cannot hire a designer today. I'm going to provide some tips to get you thinking in a design mindset in your data. So over the last year, our team has been researching and building out a design system toolkit. This kit is our foundation and our roadmap for our Tableau dashboards. And its ultimate goal is to help the user at the end realize that what they are reading is validated for the best user experience, performance, and accuracy. This is going to guide us towards that data-driven culture. Yep, this is right. It's a cat, rainbow background, but you laugh. I searched design kit, this came up, and I thought, you know what, this image is exactly right. We are laser focused on our design standards for data visualization. So in the kit we've built, we provide guidance on color with a primary and secondary color palette. We offer font guidance for font type treatment and size based on headers, copy text, labels, and axes. We have an icon library with icon usage rules, and we have foundational templates for any different output use. We built all of this off of our company brand. We collaborated with our IT user experience to understand best principles for user experience in a digital platform. And we're using a lot of Tableau's research to help build the guidance for our framework. So as Tableau users, we're all lucky. Tableau's done so much work and really identifying through research and testing fonts and colors for readability, accessibility. So this is a peek into our kit. We use that Tableau research and we link it into our kit. This is going to inform our users on the guidance and direction we're taking to get their buy-in quicker for advocacy for applying these standards. By applying these standards, ultimately what we're doing is building an expected user experience across all of our dashboards and reports. So with that expectation, we're going to build consumer confidence through a recognizable brand. We're going to help our creators and viewers understand what great looks like, and we're developing our design standards. This also benefits our work and team by time reduction of creation, consistency with increased perceived value and trust, it's professional and reliable, and we're going to maintain quality and integrity in our work. So our team's been busy guiding a group of over 125 Edward Jones Tableau users to become better at Tableau at our firm. So we meet every month to share out our knowledge, education, resources, design tips to help us all become better data stewards in the firm. We get their feedback and input on content that they desire so that we can continue to share our expertise with them so that they can get better with their data insights to inform their leadership, knowing that their work impacts the overall firm performance. So we might be a mighty team of 5, but all Tableau users, we are all designers and storytellers of data. So to also help our designers in design of dashboards, we also include standards and best practices for calculations, data source connections, and proper chart types to use. Again, leading us to that data-driven culture at the firm. In this community, we really encourage our participants to join in conversation, share their work, share ideas, and share solutions. So through the kit, through the community, what we're doing is creating a consistent experience with a repeatable process to help all of our dashboards come to life. So you're going to get started on that project. I know when I start a project, I need to get inspired. I need to get my juices flowing. So one thing I do is I go out to Google image search or my favorite sharing sites, and I search design dashboards. And there's so much great design out there. It's gonna get you into a design mindset. So once I'm inspired, I'm gonna take you through what all this comes to look like through a project I worked on with a project team over the last year. Remember that whiteboard? I know you guys love your whiteboards. So we started with a mock-up phase. You can call it a prototype, a wireframe, loose interpretation. But what we did was, based on my skills and background, we used Adobe Illustrator. We didn't want to connect immediately to the data. So in a mock-up phase, it's conceptual. We can iterate quickly, move things around to help us get to a design quicker. We're also going to try to get to know what the business problem is that we're trying to solve, and what data does the client need, and what action is the client going to take by having that data. So all of these help us lead us to a strong visual quicker. So here's the dashboard. Look past those zeros and blank titles. You know, can't share all that with you, but hopefully you notice some other things. So through that mock-up phase, we drew out shapes quickly, applied color, got to a design. And once that mock-up was approved, we went into Tableau, we connected to the data. And once we were connected to the data, we really let the data help guide us. So we took some liberties to flex the design based on the way the data guided us. But to the right, hopefully you can see those hints of the mock-ups. They really were a roadmap to the design in Tableau. Went on to the second dashboard build. And this is where we really started flexing the design system kit to test its standards. We were adding in icons. We put a footer in with specific elements, and we began using consistent font style treatments and color. And by using all of these elements together, we were really helping the user experience and helping the user guide their eye across the dashboard with little to no instruction. These dashboards are actually living together, so it was really important to have these repeatable elements, because since they go together, they really should look like they belong together. Got to the third dashboard, and here I am. I'm learning so much more about Tableau and how to bring strong design to life, how to use color in a meaningful storytelling way, and to use that color to drive elements forward and to help guide your eye in the direction we want it to. Containers, oh man, they're one of my favorite things, but was using those containers to really help us determine how do we want you to compare the data, side to side, vertically. That's how we brought in color too, to really help the user understand. Again, using the design framework to build a cohesive experience so these can live as one experience. And finally, when this project closed, it became a happy family of 4. The top left intro dashboard had all the high-level main data points, and from those you can link out to one of the other 3 dashboards. This allows for a deeper dive into more data, helps our clients really understand how their work impacts the overall firm performance. Our project team delivered each of these dashboards in an agile method, and we heard music to our ears. As the clients received these dashboards one by one, they told us that these experiences made them ask questions they didn't know existed before or didn't even know they had. Wow, that's pretty powerful. So while we think these are great design success isn't just about that cool factor, but does it drive action? Did each of these designs help our business make informed decisions to get closer to becoming a data-driven culture? We can answer yes to that. I think that is the power of design and story in our data dashboards. So thank you for indulging me, hearing my journey, listening to my thoughts about my target list. And hey, be safe out there reading those billboards. So I hope you found this interesting and that maybe you feel like design and storytelling are elements that would be valuable to your design of dashboards. And better yet, that maybe now you feel like you can do it too. I don't want to be remiss of my data audience here, so I hope this helps drive this home. There's a Stanford study that says 63% of us can remember stories. only 5% of us can remember a single statistic. So I hope you're one of the 63% today. And if you'd like to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to connect with you. And you didn't know this, but you really helped me complete a bucket list item today of becoming an event speaker. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica. That was a great story that you shared. We did actually have a couple of questions that came up. So if you want to, if you don't mind, we'll take a couple of questions here. So the first question that came through was, how do you differentiate the necessary context from clutter? So for example, McDonald's doesn't have to tell you what they do or sell, but some other people's businesses might need to give you that context. So how do you differentiate between those?
Well, I would start out by understanding the audience, understanding the medium that's needed to communicate the context. And then, you know, even if you get there and it's still a billboard, shame on you. But, you know, I think it's all about that power of building a brand and understanding of what you stand for, what your value is, that there is a lot of work behind the scenes for us as data storytellers, that there's credibility to the data. It's a trusted resource. What's the governance and literacy understanding of that data? But if you're gonna like maybe share out that data, if it's a dashboard or presentation, well, as you saw, I don't know if you had a count on my slides. I had around 55 slides, and I don't know if it felt like that to you, but sometimes it's really breaking it up. Does it all need to live together? Talk to people, share what you're doing. Do they understand? And really use that feedback to really drive home what you're trying to accomplish. So sometimes we get really married to the content, but sometimes not all that content is necessary. And I know even like our data scientists and our analysts, they love all the research they've done. But in the end, is that what your user needs to know? Or do they want you to pull out the insights for them and minimize the content? So I would challenge you to think through some of those things.
Awesome, thank you. Couple more questions. I think these are quicker answers. The first one is this dashboard a shareable template? Not 100% certain which dashboard they're asking about, but I think the answer is probably the same for both of them. So
yeah, we'll say no, but like I said, go get inspired. Look at dashboard designs that you really like. Take the elements from them and begin laying out a template that's a beginning foundation of all the work. So you don't have to start from scratch every time. That's what's called, you know, creating a recognizable brand that, okay, every time I get this dashboard, I recognize these things, I know who this is from, and that it's credible. And so just begin from that and see if that could help you. Maybe connecting and talking about these things can even help the question, whoever asked the question.
all right, and that's all the questions we had for now, but there will be breakout sessions later. So if anybody thinks of a question for Jessica, you can wait to the breakout session and then hit her up for answers there. Next, I think I'm going to hand it over back to David to do a quick introduction of our next speaker. David, are you there?
I am. So next we have Elsa. She's going to walk us through creating a visual resume in Tableau. So just for those of you who don't know Elsa, she's with RGA. She leads their analytics COE over there. This summer, she's also helping out with the RGA interns and helping me, well, actually, she's running it, a hackathon of those RGA interns where we're working with the St. Louis Food Bank to do some data visualization of their data. So she's very busy, and actually, she's one of our co-leads on the St. Louis Tableau user group, but she's just recently moved up to Minneapolis. So we're sad to see her move away, but super happy that she's able to still be with us. So without further ado, Elsa, you're up.
Thanks, Dave. So for those that have been to our tugs before, we always are trying to make sure that we have at least a couple of sessions where we're going in the tool. Because we realized sometimes we were really high level and we weren't really narrowing down to how can I actually use my Tableau skills and maybe what are some skills that I can pick up on. And we were thinking about what we should do this summer pre-COVID. We thought we should really kind of gear up even just helping interns and kind of showing them how they could, learn different skills, get certified. And one of the big topics we thought of was building an interactive resume. And so obviously with COVID, there's a lot of just job displacements, kind of looking at what do you want to do as a career. So we think it's still a great fitting topic. And we wanted to just kind of go through, maybe some tips and tricks on how you can actually build a resume in Tableau, especially if you've never done that before. And I'll kind of go into, how I actually kind of started doing that myself. So the first thing I want to talk about is just my journey of getting to this. So Dave mentioned a little bit, but I actually started as an actuarial science major back in college. I was really into math. I loved kind of more of the statistics area. But I always had this photography background, always liked design, but never thought I could actually kind of combine that in my job. And then I actually got a data visualization internship at RGA. And from there, it just kind of sparked my love for Tableau. And so this photo here, if I shared this a couple sessions ago, but this was actually my team in college. We did a data competition. We thought we were really clever with Abracadabra for our little pun name. But we went in, we thought we designed the best little funnel charts, as you can see over on the left there. And then we went and presented, and we got the very last place. And it was because we were supposed to be building statistical models, and we got too excited about making dashboards. But it kind of just sparked my just love for just making stuff with data and actually doing the design work of it. And so it kind of stepped me into that. So with that, I do want to kind of show you, I did make a resume when I was in college, and then I made one for today. And I kind of want to split and show you kind of the differences of that. So I'm just going to pull up my Tableau public profile. Mine is definitely bare compared to Dave's or someone else's. I should use it more often. You can see on the bottom, it was actually, I think my first thing I published on Tableau Public was my resume in college. So I realized I wanted to do something different because I still thought I was applying to maybe actuarial roles. I didn't really know what I was going to be doing, but I decided I should just at least try to use my skills. And so I kind of came up with this resume myself. And I'll be kind of talking through a lot of the tips that I would even have for my younger self when I made this. But I kind of tried to think of, what do I want to tell someone? And, I thought it was, amazing that I had all of these donut charts that kind of showed high school to senior year. It's definitely, back when I was, in college. But really the story I was trying to tell here was that I kind of switched and, went from a lot of my more math areas that I took a lot in high school and freshman year. And I ended up slowly switching, more to statistics, more to programming, and kind of using those different classes. And I really wanted to showcase, what classes I was taking. Obviously, this isn't a resume I would maybe show now based off of the skills and, actually having more job experience. But at the time, it kind of got me through the door. It got me the job at RGA. It got me, noticed by different companies just because I put in the time to make an interactive resume and show, yes, I can do this, even if it's not perfect. And so I kind of wanted to spark from that. And use a very similar design, use the same kind of buttons. And I made a resume that's for today. And so I did this, this is only 2 charts, and I will go into more detail of how I made these. But I really kind of had to kind of think of, how would I basically kind of clean up the one I had before? And so I still took those kind of ideas of how I had math, statistics, different areas that I wanted to showcase that I've learned. But instead I kind of split it up to even what Jessica was talking about analytics, design, storytelling. Those are usually key kind of areas when you're thinking of data visualization. And then I kind of have a combination here. So, maybe if I want to look at, where have I actually kind of built my analytics, I can kind of start to dig into that here and see, what did I do to actually grow my analytics at what times? And so this is just kind of an idea of how I kind of updated it. So with this, I want to kind of go back into my presentation. I'll give you guys kind of tips and tricks and how I even got to this design of it. So when I was thinking of how I could kind of put these all together and, give good steps for you guys if have never done a resume before, especially one in Tableau of all things, these are kind of the 6 steps that I recommend doing. And so the first one is define your story. And I'll go into more detail there, but it's really figuring out, you know, what story you're going to tell. Just like Jessica was talking about, you need to make sure it's impactful. It could be the most beautifully designed thing, but if it's not actually telling the story you need to, especially if you're trying to find a job, you're probably not going to get the job that you're actually looking for. It might be a great job, but it might not be exactly what your passions are. So definitely defining your story is really important. Finding inspiration, like Jessica even said too, this kind of goes really in line of, you know, research, look at Tableau Public, Google, try to find different examples of things out there. And then step 3 is kind of that whiteboarding, put your idea on paper. I'll kind of give some tips and tricks on that. Step 4 is actually, after you have kind of that rough draft together, actually creating your data or finding your data. I'll give you kind of examples of both. Sometimes you might not actually have to create your own data just to do this resume. And then step 5 is to actually kind of be in the tool, which we will be. And then step 6 is to test it out with your peers, which I will kind of show you the 3 different tests I think you should do to make sure that your resume is good for any kind of HR reps or anyone that you go apply to, that you feel confident that you're sharing a link and that it'll actually work effectively. So the first one is that step 1 of, you know, defining your story. So it's really, when you go to a career fair, anything like that, you know, you have to have that elevator pitch of how am I going to say in 30 seconds why I should be considered for a candidate. And so these are kind of the 3 things that when I went back to thinking about my resume and how do I amp it up from what I thought was important in college, where I thought my high school math classes were important, you know, making sure that I understand what I'm actually trying to tell of a story. So the first thing was find your why. So for me, this is just thinking about, you know, what is making you step into this next role? It could be that, you know, you are, you know, looking for a new job, maybe you've been furloughed, something like that, but also, you know, what are you looking for in that next job? What is kind of your passions? Where do you, you know, find joy in your job? And make sure that those shine through some way. It doesn't have to necessarily be a Tableau skill, but making sure that that skill gets showcased on your Tableau dashboard. I think that's really important to just kind of write down those things so that when you come back and look at it at the end, you make sure that that why is somewhere in your story. And then the next is to, you know, make sure that those things are actually, you know, kind of getting showcased, because usually if you have your Tableau skills, a lot of us, it is kind of a sandbox. So there's a lot of us that are really good designers. There's people that have come from storytelling background. There's people that are very analytical, people from programming backgrounds. Just make sure that you are, don't worry if you don't have the best design dashboard. If maybe you're really better at getting those crazy calculated fields and making Tableau do things other people don't think it can do, maybe that's what you want to showcase more than the design. So make sure that you're bringing those things. And a great way to reflect on that is to kind of ask people around you that have worked with you, you know, what do you see that I bring out to the table? You know, what have you gotten pointed out at reviews? Make sure that those things are out there as well. Even if it's not your passion, make sure that those kind of skills that you bring to the table are there. And then the other one that I really think is important is that just think about those different milestones. We always obviously think about, you know, the career that we've had, the 5-year job, but make sure that you kind of think about those other side things. Like even Dave was mentioning that, you know, I'm planning this hackathon and I'm working with the intern. So those aren't necessarily things that, you know, might get me that next job, but they might, you know, having those on there, having things that, you know, might have been just a day activity, like that data competition I showed a picture of earlier. That's something that when they see that on the resume, they can talk to you about. And especially because of the level of detail, as you know, a Tableau dashboard can have, of if you click on something, it can go down to a lower detail, and a lower detail, you can actually do more than just the one page they're seeing. So, you know, usually traditionally you bring in a resume, you have your 5 points of why this 5-year career turned into this. But you can now actually kind of drag that and drill down into more detail. So I really recommend kind of writing down those milestones that you might not think, like for example, me talking at this would be a milestone for me. Just think of those events and little things that, you know, might not fit on your 1-page resume, but actually kind of tell more of a story of who you are. So the next one is step 2. So this one's pretty, Jessica already kind of covered it, so I don't want to go too much into it, but really kind of go find inspiration. So Tableau actually has an interactive resume gallery. So this is just a screenshot of it, but you can actually go into there, you can download people's things. You can kind of look at how do they make this chart? How do they do this? You can see, for example, this Christopher one on the far left, he's actually talking about different areas that he's worked in. So he's looking at US down to Australia. And that's kind of the story he's trying to tell. But, you know, you can actually go into here and find inspiration. You don't have to start from scratch. That's kind of the beautiful thing about Tableau, is you can always put your own spin on it design-wise, but kind of get that inspiration from others. So I really encourage going here. But the other biggest thing too is that, you know, look at just normal resumes. Look at someone's resume that stands out to you that might be more well-designed, and try to think of how could I make that interactive. You know, maybe there's this really cool chart, but I would want to add something to it of, wouldn't it be cool if I clicked on it and it showed my milestones or something? Kind of start to think about, you know, ways that you could take a regular resume or even a Tableau resume and kind of make it your own. The next one is, once you have kind of, again, your story and a little bit of inspiration, you know, kind of a design board, if you will, of kind of things that you're trying to accomplish. The next thing I really recommend is really just putting that idea on paper. So, you know, start sketching something. You know, these are both sketches that I have done. And as you can see, they're basically the extremes on different sides. The one on the left is really me just saying, I know these are kind of the areas I want. I know I want to have something at the top. And then all I did is I started writing sticky notes of, maybe I want this to be a bar chart with my x-axis being time and my, you know, y-axis being a skill or something. And I can put that on here and just sticky notes and kind of start moving them around, and maybe just limiting myself to how many charts I put on it. So you can go from that side that has no drawing at all over to this far side, which was actually a site admin dashboard. And I had my questions that I wanted to get across, and I designed the whole thing, had color palettes, all of that figured out. You can kind of go from one extreme to the other. Do not feel that if you are uncomfortable with design that you can't sketch something beforehand, because as some of you may know, once you get into Tableau, it can sometimes be a little tricky of, you know, your data is not exactly right for that chart and you might need to have to go back. It's always good to kind of have a little bit of a game plan going in, just so that when you go in, it doesn't feel overwhelming and you step back and kind of give up on it. Make sure that you kind of have that idea in your head, because it's going to just help you propel and figure out what you need to do, what kind of data you need to get to that. So I think that's really important, especially coming from a resume where the data isn't just organically there for you. So on that exact same topic, we're on step 4 now of, you know, creating and finding your data. So this is really important of, you know, once you have your story, once you kind of have that roadmap of where you're trying to go, now you need to figure out what kind of data to use. So there's a lot of different examples for this. I'm about to show you the one that I did to make the resume I had, but I wanted to also kind of highlight the part of find your data. So I had a similar experience for, I'm in a new grad program at RGA, where we all are given this task at the end of the year where we had to say, how do we affect RGA's bottom line? And we had to present that to, you know, executive leadership of how us, you know, entry-level employees affect RGA's bottom line. And I was really struggling with it, frankly, because I didn't feel like I was part of making RGA money, anything like that. And I decided to twist it, and I decided to actually take my calendar data and show which meetings I was in, which buildings I was in, who I was meeting with, how often I was meeting with them, and then what they did, and kind of show that I was actually kind of helping the entire company, which is just kind of how our COE works at RGA. And all I did with that is I actually kind of sparked the idea of, let me actually just go export my Outlook calendar data and let me just use it and kind of run with it. And so I just wanted to kind of point out, you know, there might be data around that you're not thinking of that you can actually use. So it can even be things of scrubbing your LinkedIn for things. You know, there's always data everywhere, as we all know. So I think, you know, making sure that you kind of think you don't always have to create your data. The example I'm showing you today, I definitely created it from scratch, but just to kind of, you know, reiterate, you can always kind of find data in places that you don't expect. So I definitely kind of wanted to point that out to you guys. So for my example that we're going to get into the tool in a minute, I just wanted to kind of show you the 2 different data sources that I made for it. So one is like kind of my career and kind of what you think of as a traditional resume. And then the other one is milestones. So the first one is career. This one, I basically kind of did, you know, I had to think of what I actually wanted to highlight in mine. And again, I had kind of a little bit of a plan before I got into it. And so I knew I wanted to have, you know, kind of my title or the name of what I do. For example, you know, I was a photographer, as you can see on that first line, and then kind of my employer. So I wanted to make sure they kind of could tell, you know, who employed me, or, you know, where was my internship, something like that. And then the type, I ended up not using this, but you know, it's kind of a good lesson to learn. Is it's always good to have data that you don't know if you're going to use or not. Of maybe I wanted to let them filter to my internships versus development opportunities versus employment. I didn't end up doing that, but it's always kind of good to have data that you might want to bring in. And then location, in case I ever wanted to do something with that. Skill, so this is the part that I wouldn't have had this column if I didn't think about what my story was. And I knew that my story, for my own personal opinion, was that I wanted design, storytelling, analytics to come through. I knew that that was kind of, I weirdly had all three of those kind of going in through college. And I kind of realized that was what I was trying to do with my first resume, and I just didn't hit the mark with it. And I kind of decided I wanted to revamp that by using those three categories. So this is basically me flagging, is this something that would help me with design? Is this something that helps me with storytelling? So even something like bridal consulting, you might not think of storytelling, but it's sales, and it's, I can tell you for sure, it's definitely me kind of trying to sell someone, you know, a $2,000 white dress versus a $100 white dress. It takes a lot of storytelling. So that was something that I really thought, you know, I brought to the table that you might not expect. And then I have my start date, my end date, you know, your classic resume of how long did I work at each place. And then my notes. And so this would be what you kind of think of as maybe your bullet points that you have. And these were kinds of things that I knew that I wanted when someone hovered over and saw the tooltip, they'd be able to get more information about what exactly is that dot, what exactly is that Gantt chart bar doing. So that's kind of where I put my notes. I could, you know, put even more columns than what I have, but this is kind of where I organically started. And then the other one is very similar. And this is my one that's my milestones. Like I mentioned, these are things that might have only been a day. So most of these were a day or maybe a month total. But something that I wanted to point out that I did. For example, the Tableau hackathon is the bottom one there. So that was, you know, this month. So it's actually in a week. So hopefully that goes well. But I have the Tableau hackathon. I know it's happening this week. Where is it happening? RGA, and then kind of some notes about it. Because I knew that these were things that I wanted to point out of different things. For example, top sales. I knew that was something that I might not put on my resume, but I would want someone to maybe dig into if they were actually interested. So with that, we're about to go into the Tableau tool, which is step 5, and I'll kind of show you how I use that data to make a resume. But instead of kind of going straight into it, I want to skip over to step 6, just to kind of talk about how you test it once it's finished so that we don't have to go back into this presentation again. But really, we'll kind of start designing, and then once you're done designing, you're kind of going to go to this test. So I thought of kind of 3 different test cases that I think once you're finished, you have your, you know, beautiful resume together. Who are the 3 different types of people that you should have test this? And so the first one that I have is the data community. So once you're done, I definitely suggest reaching out to people in, you know, that have Tableau skills or any kind of data viz community, Power BI, you know, ClickView, anything like that, and just see what they might suggest. You know, it's always a great thing. It could be post into our St. Louis Tug group and to our LinkedIn and ask, you know, for any tips. You know, any feedback is great to have. Of, you know, there might be something that you don't notice. You might love this color palette, but it might actually, you know, not actually work. Maybe it's not colorblind friendly, and someone will point that out to you. It's always kind of good to have those different suggestions, especially from people that are in that same field as you. And then the second is, I really think it's good to have someone that you've worked with or is in your field, especially if your field is not data visualization. So a lot of us, you know, don't have that whole data viz community within our, you know, actual work. You might be the only one using Tableau at your job. So I think it's really important to have someone that understands what other skills you bring to the table. Maybe it's that you're in the healthcare industry. Have them look at it and make sure that they kind of still see that story. They still understand the experience that you have that might not necessarily just be Tableau that you kind of automatically see because you built a Tableau dashboard. And so I think it's really important to have that peer review, especially from someone that you've maybe worked with before. And then the third is kind of the one that I actually did a test with this, but find someone that's not familiar with Tableau or your industry at all. So this could be a friend, a family member, preferably someone that has never used Tableau before. So someone that would look at your dashboard, maybe not know what it is, and be able to just ask them some questions and see if they can navigate in it. I think this is really important because when you share this resume, if you're using it for a job, to get a job, you don't know who the first person's going to look at this resume is. And if it's someone that's never used Tableau before, let's say it's someone like an HR recruiter that's never seen that before, I think it's important that they're still able to understand how they can navigate it. They understand that they have, your normal resume and then this, and you're adding to it. It's kind of like your portfolio, but I think it's really important that someone could navigate with it without getting frustrated, because if you know Tableau, you might know I click on this and I just need to click on it again to unfilter it. But if someone else gets really dug into all of your filters and dashboard actions and doesn't know how to get back to the normal home, if you will, it might be a problem. They might get really frustrated with it and say, this is not what I want. So I think it's really important to find someone. So I actually had my grandma test it out. She did struggle a couple times, and I actually kind of simplified it because of her. But, I kind of showed her, just read, and she read through it just like normal text, which is just how I designed it. And she was able to kind of click on it and see how it changed. And she was really excited to just kind of see it and hover around. And I didn't have too many dashboard actions going on. But that was because I knew that was kind of my big test for myself, is can my grandma actually click on my dashboard? She is not tech savvy. So I think it's really important to kind of have something like that where you can kind of, do that different unfamiliar territory. So I really think these are important things. So with that, I'm going to go into the tool, which is kind of that, again, step 5, start designing. And I'm just going to show you what I made, because it is actually pretty simple. So I want to just kind of show you what kind of sparked the different ideas for me. So let me pull up Tableau here. So I have my Tableau resume, and if you guys are familiar with Tableau, I put it on one screen and the other, so you might see some stuff that's really big and a little small, so deal with it with me. But as you can see, all I have is, I have this little emoji of myself. This is just like if I put a picture of me, and I actually got inspiration from that Tableau resume gallery. Almost all of them had pictures of themselves, so I figured I should put something of myself on there too. I have my name, a big font, title, and then kind of the industry that I'm in, which is business intelligence. You could put, kind of whatever area, maybe it's healthcare, something like that. And then I have, again, I decided to kind of use my old college resume as inspiration, but I have my different buttons. So these are analytics, design, storytelling, combination. And so let me full screen this so you can kind of feel the interactivity that I built, which is not much. But what I did is I have it so that they can kind of, maybe click on design. It's going to filter. I decided to use the animations because I wanted to kind of test those out, as that's a new feature from Tableau. And I filtered down so someone can see, where my design background comes from, and they can start to see, and I have highlighting down at the bottom. I have filtering on the Gantt chart. So I'm using different kind of combinations. So I'm showing I can use both. And someone can hover over this, see that, I was a photographer, and this was actually when I designed a website as an intern. And I can kind of start to see that when they kind of hover down here, maybe they want to see, well, why would I pick this time? Is, oh, I had this website design, graphic design workshops, things that I might want someone to look at if they were really interested in. Maybe they want me for a design, role, and that's actually why they're looking at me and what's differentiating me between someone else. But maybe it's actually my analytics. So someone could click on this and dig into a different area, which is just really nice to have because they can kind of go through that as well. And I do explain that in my timeline and my milestones. I kind of explain, why I think that I'm good at this field is that I have all 3 of these combinations. And you can even see with that dark blue, a big reason I used those 3 buttons as my legend and as my color palette is that was the big story I wanted to tell, is that I've been in analytics, I've been in design, I've had storytelling experience, and I think that's what makes me work well in a COE and in this tech strategy environment. And so that's where, if you can even look at the Gantt chart, you see that those 3 different colors kind of then combine to that dark blue that is really that combination, which is where I am today, is almost all of the roles I have now of, being at RGA, being a co-lead of TUG here, is just from that combination of having all 3 of those. And so I think that's a really important thing to kind of, I wanted to point out about myself when someone looked at this. And then the last thing before I go into these actual charts in a little bit more detail is then I have over here just different links. So one of these is to actually go to my Tableau public. This will actually pop up an email, and this one will actually go to my LinkedIn profile. So if someone clicks on this, you're going to see it pops up my LinkedIn profile. They're able to see this here and get right to it, get to more information about me just from a click there. And again, that's something that, you know, someone that might be an HR rep that has never used Tableau before might get a little frustrated, and they see that LinkedIn, they click on it, and suddenly they're in familiar territory that they expect. Even having that is just something really important, I think, is to just make sure you can get to those different areas for people. And so that was kind of the basics that I wanted. And again, I wanted to make sure this was a basic resume because I didn't want this to be something that takes, you know, tons and tons of time. I think this took me 3 hours total to do. And really the longest part of it was really me deciding, you know, what kind of coloring do I want to do? I knew I wanted to change the background. I wanted to show that I can, you know, do more formatted than just what's defaulted in Tableau, where I made my own color palette. I used, you know, a different background, all those kinds of things. I matched my color, my font to the shirt that I had. Just those little touches that is showing that I have design skills. I knew that was what I wanted to showcase. Someone else might want to make something that's a really complicated graph that people don't even realize Tableau could do, or some crazy parameter actions. There's so many cool ideas you can go with this. And I just knew for the sake of this, I wanted to keep it simple for you guys. And I also wanted to show my design. So those are kind of the two reasons I built mine this way. And so really the last thing I have is really just talking about these 3 charts, and then I'll hand it over of really there's this Gantt chart here. So this is just all I have is date started. I have my notes. I have my tooltip here. And it's just kind of a basic hover here and just some basic formatting, nothing, you know, crazy in here. And then I have my bubble chart, which is really just kind of a scatter plot. But all I have is I actually have it be a dual axis because I knew that I wanted it to have kind of the border and the inside. And I knew that I could do that with this. As you can see on this blue yellow, they kind of hover in together. I knew that that was something I wanted to show because I knew that sometimes I'm going to have things that hover over the same because it's just a date. And so I actually used a dual axis chart. So again, it's just showcasing little things that you might know about Tableau other people don't. And I just kind of had this cleaned up. And then last but not least is my buttons here. So these were kind of my buttons that I then kind of incorporated in there. So with that, I definitely want to make sure I have time for everyone else. But in our breakout session, I can go into more detail of anything that I made if you have questions about it. But these were just kind of, when I went to think about it, were kind of the 6 things that I really think are important to think of, you know, defining your story, find inspiration, put it on paper, create that data, design it in Tableau, really get into there, utilize those skills that you guys are, you know, developing right now, and then test it out on people. So with that, if you guys have any questions, I can definitely answer some of those. So thank you.
Thanks, Elsa. There are a few questions, so I can read those out to you. So the first one is, are interactive resumes good for a data scientist or engineer?
Yes, I would definitely say so. I think if you are trying to show those skills, that you can even take your data science experience that you might have and be able to actually report that. So I think that is a big thing with the data science field, is that you might come up with a model, but actually showing that that model is telling the right story and showing that to someone. I think showing those dashboard skills is always a great thing to do, even if it's not necessarily the field that you're in.
And then, so how did you learn to be so good at data storytelling? One of our attendees wishes that he had that skill on his resume.
Could you repeat that? So how?
Yeah, where did you learn to be so good at data storytelling?
Oh, I would like to think I am doing okay with it. I think the biggest thing is that I actually kind of work in a COE. I think that's really helped me because I have to approach stories that I've never told of. I work with actuaries, I work with data scientists, and I have to kind of learn how do I make sure that they tell the right story. And so I've kind of pieced these steps together, that even these 6 steps you can use for stuff other than a resume to make sure that you're kind of telling the right story with your data. But I do think it's kind of that combination of working with other people and looking at their reports and having to do it myself from something I didn't know, some data I didn't understand. So I think that's really helped me. So.
Perfect. And then the final one is, why did you use landscape view for your resume?
Oh, that's a good question. I think mostly because most people that are going to look at your interactive resume are going to look at it on an actual laptop computer. So I know usually you have a resume, someone will print that out, probably bring it to your actual, interview. But usually if you want them to actually look at it, you're wanting them to actually click on it, because that's the powerful thing of the Tableau resume. So I think if you have it in landscape, most people have a landscape monitor that they're going to be experiencing that through. But I have seen some that are vertical too, that they actually want and encourage people to print out too. But that's why I went with landscape, is most people will consume it on a computer just like we are today.
All right, perfect. And then somebody just asked how they can view that resume. So I've shared the link to Elsa's resume in the Q&A and the answered side. So anybody can get to it regardless of whether you have Tableau Desktop or Tableau Public. But just as a reminder, Tableau Public is a free tool. It's super powerful. And that walks us into our next presenter. Elsa, any parting thoughts?
Oh, no, I'm good.
All right. Thank you for your time. Great presentation. Next, we have Sean Miller from the Kansas City Tableau user group. So Sean is a Tableau ambassador. He's one of the Kansas City Tableau user group co-leads, and an all-around nice guy. Met Sean, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago now through the Tableau Data Fam on Twitter. So happy to have him here. Glad that we could finally get our schedules to line up.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thanks, David. Hello, everybody. As David just said, my name is Sean Miller, and I run the Kansas City Tableau user group. And really excited to talk to you guys today. Just getting my stuff ready to go here. All right. So who am I? This is me. I'm a senior BI developer at Cerner over in Kansas City. So Cerner, you probably heard of them, especially if you're in the healthcare field. We do primarily, we work with healthcare IT. So we build the software for EHR records, EHR, EMR, electronic health records. That's what Cerner's been known for the last several years. What I work on is I work in our population health analytics division, and I sit on a COE over there and lead kind of I lead the Tableau deployment over there. So really cool stuff. I've been using Tableau for several years. April 2015 is when I got my first license. I still remember the date, and I'll get into why in just a minute. But I am now a Tableau Desktop Certified Professional. Like I said, I run the user group over in Kansas City. I'm also a Tableau social media ambassador, which means I tweet and post on LinkedIn a lot. So you can follow me on Twitter at hipstervizninja. And I also have a blog under the same name, so hipstervizninja.com. You can check out my blog. And my Tableau Public vizzes are featured in the book #MakeoverMonday. So I've been with that. I've been participating in that community project since its inception back in 2016. So why do I remember the date that I got my first Tableau license? Well, so imagine yourself, like many of you probably went through a training class of some sort, and it probably had to do. You probably learned the ins and outs of everything you can do in Tableau with Superstore, right? So imagine this, you're in your very first training class, your instructor has told you all about how awesome Tableau is and how it's a drag and drop interface and you can't break anything. So for initial, initiation, just get in here, get into Tableau, connect to the data source, and just play around with things, drag things, drop things, sort things, put things on color, do whatever you want, figure it out. So I'm going to reenact for you live right here, right now, the very first chart I ever made in Tableau. I looked at this list and I said, oh, customer name, that sounds fun. Let's put that over here. And sales, that makes sense. It's a superstore. They probably care a lot about sales. So I drag that over the columns. Oh, wow, that's a really nice bar chart. Wonder if I can sort. Oh yeah, I see the sort icon. Let's see what that is. Now, I'm not making this up. you can imagine the shock on my face when I did this. That is my name at the very top. And it has been ever since 2015, which was Tableau version 9.3 was the first version I ever used. So really crazy origin story. Once I saw that, I looked around at all of my people around me in my training class, and they had the same person. So it wasn't like the instructor went and aliased the top salesperson to each person sitting at each seat. This was fate. This was serendipity. So anyway, really cool origin story. It's probably one of the coolest ones out there. I'm a little bit biased, but it's pretty slick. So, but that's not why I'm here today. What I want to talk to you guys about today is a project that I've started this year, back in January. I had a whole lot of plans. I'm sure like many of you did, regardless of domain. Had a lot of plans for 2020. I wanted to do a whole lot of things. And then we had this thing happen in March that kind of threw everybody for a loop. But now that we've kind of readjusted, things are getting back together. So I created this project for the community, for the data fam, and it's 20 for 20. And I thought it was really cool play on words. I'm also a big sports guy, and so big fan of the ESPN's 30 for 30. So it kind of played into this, and I also took some inspiration from a couple of years ago, several years ago. Tableau Public used to put out something similar to this, and they've since stopped. But basically, what this is, it is a collection of 20 excellent, highly inspirational, interesting topics, great data sets that you can just jump in immediately. You don't have to do any cleaning. You don't have to do, you don't really have to do much of anything as far as data prep. You can just jump right into Tableau and just start creating. What I really like about a lot of these is a lot of these data sets lend themselves really nicely to both the design aspect as well as the analysis aspect. So regardless of where you fall on the spectrum of strength when it comes to data visualization, if you're more of an analyst and you want to get really, you want to build a really analytic heavy dashboard, every one of these data sets has some really excellent data to do such a thing. Additionally, these topics, I mean, Bigfoot sightings. A design person can go crazy, and if you want to get really good with design, you can design this really cool dashboard that, looks like, you have a scatter plot that kind of is shaped like Bigfoot's foot or something like that. There's so many different ways that you can take this stuff. You can look at just several of these, not just Bigfoot sightings, but video games. If you like video games, there's a video game data set in here. Anyway, I built this. I wanted to give it because I don't know about you, but even after 6 years in the community, the number of hashtags to keep up with can be overwhelming. There's Makeover Monday. There's one for every day of the week, right? And so what I really wanted to do is I wanted to take all of the years of experience that I have in the community. I really wanted to boil all that down to, here are 20 data sets that are really excellent. They've produced excellent examples throughout the community. People have used them a long time, for a long time. It's been used many, many times. And so you can just jump right in. It's also really good for searching Tableau Public for some of these, or searching the Makeover Monday hashtag on Twitter to look for inspiration, because some of these are Makeover Monday data sets. back when I started in the community, there were no hashtags. It was just people gathering data and making a dashboard and then sharing it. There was no community hashtags, which has kind of been interesting to watch the evolution of. But so what I've wanted to do with this project is I really want to not just put out the dashboard or not just put out the data sets, but I also want to highlight some really cool examples of what people have done with each of the data sets. So each one of these is a clickable link that will take you to the raw data set for each one of these. And I'm going to post this link here in the chat here whenever I'm done, so that you guys, if you want to, it's also on my Tableau public profile if you want to dive into some of these whenever you've got some time. But so, and then I also, like I said, I wanted to really kind of want to do kind of these deep dives into these data sets. So I talk about what the data looks like, some pitfalls or some things that you might want to look out for when you're doing it. And then lastly, I just want to show off some cool stuff that people have done with it. So, this post goes into looking at the global temperature anomalies since all the way back from 1850. So really, really cool stuff. And you can just scroll down here and really see some really cool ways that people have used this dashboard or have used this data set, excuse me. And which are, as you can see, several different ways to use the exact same data, which is really nice. So and then, so if you wanted to jump in and do this, you could easily jump into this data set and maybe use one of these as inspiration or something like that. So the next, another one that I really liked was the rat sightings, New York City rat sightings. So if you didn't know, New York City 311 actually has a database of every single rat sighting in the city, dating all the way back since 2010, which is pretty crazy to think about. So I think, there's over 145,000 rat sightings logged since 2010, which is pretty crazy. So, but anyway, then again, I showed off. This is a really cool one by Lindsay Betzendahl. This looks like a city, right? It looks like a city skyline, but it's actually a bar chart of rat sightings by month, which is just a really, really genius way of using this data, which is really cool. So really interesting. Sarah Bartlett used this data set to show off one of the new chart types that was recently released. So she used it to do the new density mark. So you could see that. And then I really like this one from Chris Love. He did this density chart type back in 2013, back in version 8.1, which is really cool. So just shows you that people have been using this data set for a long time. So definitely want to, and then I use this data set. I wanted to basically do the bivariate analysis to look at the number of rat sightings compared to the number of food establishment complaints. So 311 is really just a treasure trove of data. And so then you kind of get this, when you blend the two together, you kind of get this really cool view that says which zip codes have a low number of food establishment complaints and a high number of rat sightings. So, or, some variation of that. So, and then so that's, I don't really have a whole lot else to go in. I just wanted to really touch on this data set. A couple of This does feature some of David's hashtag Throwback Thursday data sets in here. So I really, as I mentioned when I was gathering the data sets, I did reach out to each of the hashtag leaders, if you will, and I reached out to them and I said, hey, I'm putting together this idea. Do you have any data sets that you particularly enjoyed? So if so, let me know what they are. And I think the Thomas Edison patents is one of David's. But so anyway, just a really cool data set. The way that I kind of envision people using this is, at the bottom of each post, I tell the people what the challenge is. Challenge is really simple. Just go make something. The deadline is up to you. I know that some of the hashtags it's kind of like on a weekly cadence. This is like a yearly cadence. There is no challenge. There is no competition. It's just these are really great data sets for you to jump into and practice data visualization design, practice data visualization analysis. Whichever one you want, do both. You can make multiple different dashboards out of the same data. And I really think this is a really cool resource for people to have. I've been using this internally at Cerner with our team to kind of a go have fun and learn outside of making something for the boss, which is something that I hold near and dear. So yeah, definitely take this and run with it. It can be whatever you want it to be. So before I jump off, there is one thing that if I would be not doing myself a service if I didn't talk about it. Definitely want to highlight Workout Wednesday. If you are new to Tableau, or if you've ever seen a dashboard and you've said, how in the world do you do that? This is the community project for you. And basically what you do is you recreate a dashboard given a set of requirements. So we give you the final product, we give you the requirements to get there, and then you go figure out how to do it. And which is really, really great. You really get it's an awesome project. I owe a lot of my success to it because it really helps you really understand some of the nuts and bolts of what Tableau is doing underneath the covers. And the great thing is that all of the challenge workbooks are downloadable. So it's really a matter of, okay, go see how far you can get with this challenge. And when you get stuck, just go download the workbook and reverse engineer it and then learn from it, right? So, because that's what we're all here for. So anyway, thanks so much. And go forth and viz.
Hey, thanks, Sean. I really appreciate you taking the time to walk through your initiative as well as highlight Workout Wednesday. Do you want to promote your user group that I think is next week?
Oh yeah, so we do have a user group meeting coming up. The KC Tug. It's usergroups.tableau.com/Kansas City. And we've got one coming up. I'm going to be talking about the new set controls that were just released in version 2020.2. We've got somebody going to be talking about some UI and UX design best practices. And then we've got somebody else who's going to be doing a presentation on a framework for gathering dashboard and report requirements. So should be a good time. It's next Tuesday, or next Tuesday at 2 p.m. So come check us out.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so the next part of our meeting is a series of breakout sessions. So the way that I understand this will work, and Alyssa, I think you're on too, so if I misspeak, you can correct me, but I'll be pasting a link into the chat. If you go to this link, it will open up a brand new Zoom meeting, and you can jump into that Zoom meeting and be automatically assigned to a breakout room. So each of our panelists will be hosting a breakout room. There will be a fourth that is kind of general Tableau. And if you have any particular questions for those individuals, or just to be able to kind of socialize with the St. Louis data community, this is your opportunity. So now would be the right time to go ahead and click on that link, unless I'm missing anything, Alyssa.
Nope, that sounds great. We'll get everyone shuffled in once they join.
Yep, hope to see you guys there in a moment.
David, do we